Howdy, my partners in nerdship, and welcome to the brand new episode of your favorite entertainment show on Maryville Cable Nerd Central. The only people qualified to inform you of the fact that you didn't know that Silence of the Lambs is actually a sequel to a movie called Manhunter. Just because we're entertainment-based doesn't mean we can't be informative. And that's what we'll be right now when we kick it to the news. Once again, the complaints of fandoms have forced Hollywood's hands to improve something. So go us! A few months ago, something horrific was unleashed upon us. It was weird, was muscular, had human teeth. It was the Sonic the Hedgehog movie trailer. When the fabled trailer debuted, and even before it debuted, the new design for the blue blur was ununanimously hated by fans and casual viewers alike, forcing the director to tweet, "We get it, you don't like the design, we'll delay the movie and fix it." This leads us to today, as the first images of this fix has been released. And yeah, they fixed it. Sonic actually looks like Sonic. His textures have been smoothed, his gloves were returned, his eyes were reshaped, and his shoes aren't weird Jordans. Our beautiful blue boy will be rolling into theaters this Valentine's Day. Two new villains have been added to the new Matt Reeves-directed Batman film, Catwoman and the Riddler. We also have confirmed casting for both roles. Selena Kyle, aka Catwoman, will be played by the stepdaughter of Aquaman, Zoe Kravitz. You may recognize her from her performance in Mad Max Fury Road as one of the bad guy's slave wives. The other villain is Edward Nygma, aka the Riddler. He will be played by Paul Dano. While his fame is not as recognizable as Kravitz, you may recognize him still from the film Looper as one of Joseph Gordon-Levitt's assassin friends in the earlier parts of the movie. Whatever your opinions of these castings are, the one thing is for sure, anything is better than Halle Berry's Catwoman. Speaking of iconic DC villains, we've known for years that Dwayne Johnson has had plans for a Black Adam solo movie. But like we said, that was first announced years ago. Well, things are finally moving forward as Dwayne Johnson took to Twitter to announce that his 10-year journey to become the arch nemesis of Captain Marvel, Shazam, will finally come to fruition as production begins as soon as this July. Villains may be scary, but you know what may be even scarier? Whatever Bailey has in store for us at Scary Movie 202. Take it away.
Hello, I'm Bailey Ramsey and welcome back to Scary Movie 202, where I'll be diving into different scary movies every week. This week we'll be looking at the 2017 Netflix original, Gerald's Game. This movie is about the married couple Jesse and Gerald going on a weekend getaway to spice up their life. When Gerald's fantasy turns into a fear, Jesse and Gerald get into it, with him ending up having a heart attack. Jessie can't do anything because she is handcuffed to the bed. After seeing her husband die, she starts hallucinating, seeing him and herself. She screams for help, but the only one who can save her is herself. I wouldn't consider this a scary movie, but a more of a what the heck did I just watch kind of movie. I did find this movie very interesting in the fact that they have Jessie hallucinate Gerald and herself. It was cool that Gerald was talking down on Jessie, but then she would talk herself up and remind her of what she must do. I love when Gerald gets up and she is shook because she thought he was dead, but then realizes she's just crazy. She definitely goes through a lot of internal conflict with having been sexually assaulted by her dad when she was 12 and having never spoke of it. This is why when she is handcuffed to the bed, she feels trapped and yells stop to Gerald. I get that her being handcuffed to the bed makes her feel like she was 12 again, being chained to her secret about her dad, but it was still confusing. Gerald and her dad were similar people and she could never really get away from her secret. Some parts of this movie were confusing to follow just because she flashes back to when she was 12. He's a guy who she calls the Moonlight Man standing in the room, but she thought he wasn't real and I also thought he wasn't real. We later find out that he's a psychotic dude that goes around killing people and taking pieces of their body along with jewelry.
You're only made of moonlight. You're only made of moonlight.
You're not real. You're not real.
Officer!
You're only made of moonlight.
I didn't understand that part and why it was such a big deal. I did like when she got out, she was walking down the hall and she gave the Moonlight Man her wedding ring and left. The dog eating Gerald was messed up. He's a stray dog and has to do what he's gotta do, but eating Gerald, that's a little too far. The part where Jessie cuts her hand to get the cuffs off was so hard to watch. I had to pause it for a bit just because my stomach was feeling a little weak, which never happens. I seriously thought I was going to puke. I also love that she wraps her hand with pads to put pressure on her hand and keep it from bleeding everywhere. I thought it was funny. I'm just glad that she lived because there were times towards the end when I was like, seriously, just keep your eyes open. You're almost there. Don't die. Don't die. If she would have died, this really would have been a kick in the balls. It was also nice to see that she ended up sharing her story with boys and girls who went through the same thing she did when she was 12. I'm giving this movie 5 Ooga Boogas out of 10 just because it really wasn't a scary movie, but it did give me the heebie-jeebies at certain points. It was overall a good movie, but maybe not the best one for this show. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Bailey Ransier, and this has been Scary Movie 202. I will catch you next week when we go over Silence of the Lambs.
Thanks, Bailey. Can't wait to see what you have in store for our Halloween special next week. Well, whether you want it or not, seems The Matrix 4 is making progress in its development as Neil Patrick Harris has been cast. Plot and all the juicy stuff is unknown, but Keanu Reeves and NPH seem like a pair that definitely should have happened before. Say what you want about Revolutions, but Reloaded is pretty underrated. Let's see what else is underrated with Katie.
When you look into their eyes, you know somebody is home.
They're an animal that possesses great spiritual power, not to be meddled with.
Welcome back to Underrated. I'm Katie, and this week on Underrated, we are going to be talking about one of the most underrated documentaries, Blackfish. If you haven't seen Blackfish before, let me tell you what it's about. Blackfish is a documentary about a popular aquarium, if you can even call it that, SeaWorld. In this documentary, they discuss the lives of killer whales and a particular whale called Tilikum. Tilikum was one of the most popular killer whales at SeaWorld. This movie goes to describe how they capture whales by taking the smallest one out of their pods of whales.
Just like kidnapping a little kid away from her mother. Everybody's watching, what can you do? It's the worst thing I can think of, I can't think of anything worse than that. When the whole hunt was over, there were 3 dead whales in the net. And so they had Peter and Brian and I cut the whales open, fill them with rocks, put anchors on their tail and sink them.
They also show the conditions of SeaWorld and how the conditions really affect the animals. You hear from previous whale trainers about not only the acts of aggression from whales, but also the way they are forced to live in a tank. To be honest, before seeing this movie, I really didn't have an opinion on animals in captivity. In fact, when I was younger, my parents took me to SeaWorld and I thought it was great. But after I saw this documentary, I really paid attention to what happens behind the glass. Something that stands out to me is the lies that SeaWorld would tell. Just like when the dorsal fin flops over, that it happens in 20% of killer whales, when in fact it's in less than 1%.
25% of whales have a fin that turns over like that as they get older.
Dorsal collapse happens in less than 1% of wild killer whales. We know this. All of the captive males 100% have collapsed dorsal fins.
This documentary also mentions the loss of Dawn Brenshaw. Dawn was a popular SeaWorld trainer in Florida. They described her as having a special bond with all the whales and one of the most hardworking trainers there. She unfortunately was killed by Tilikum during a live show in Florida. This isn't the only person that Tilikum has shown aggression to, and he is not the only killer whale in captivity to harm a trainer. Yet there have been no reports of a killer whale harming anyone in the wild. Dawn was a talented trainer who really cared about the animals, but SeaWorld tried to save themselves by saying that it was a trainer error.
Dawn would tell you that it was her mistake. They blamed her.
In my opinion, SeaWorld has let this go on for too long. People have been hurt and killed, and the animals have been stuck in small tanks fighting each other. This is not how they are supposed to live. They should not have been taken away from their pods in the ocean to come into an oceanic circus. Tilikum died in captivity on January 6, 2017. It is now a rule that trainers cannot be in the water with whales. According to NationalGeographic.com, California SeaWorld has officially stopped doing killer whale shows. Texas and Florida will stop sometime this year. Out of 1 to 10 scale, I give this documentary 9 stars. I like how this documentary brought to light a topic that wasn't popular at the time. I also like that they had former trainers talk about their experience at the parks. And lastly, this documentary reminded us that all animals are not entertainment.
Thanks, Katie. We're going to take a quick break, but don't worry, News and Packs will return shortly, so stay tuned. Welcome back to Nerd Central, letting you know that Temple of Doom, the sequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark, was the first ever PG-13 movie, being deemed too violent for PG because of ripping people's hearts out, and not violent enough to be R because short round. Well, this may not be a sequel, but we have a couple of remake or reboot trailers that have been released. Honestly, I don't know the difference between the two anymore. The first of these is Doolittle. No, not Dr. Doolittle, just Doolittle. I guess he hasn't earned his PhD yet. While the original movie's focused on a vet who can talk to animals, played by Eddie Murphy, and his wacky shenanigans, this film seems like a weird adventure movie about a guy who can talk to animals, played by Robert Downey Jr. Why is this such a different and weird plot than the Eddie Murphy films? Were those not hardcore enough? Well, I guess we'll see when Doolittle is released January 17th. Our other reboot, remake, reimagining thing is Disney's live-action Lady and the Tramp. The odd thing about this one, though, is Disney has for some reason decided not to release this one in theaters. An odd choice, considering Lion King very recently came close to making $1 billion. There's not much to say here because, well, it's the Lady and the Tramp, you know the plot. Just know it'll look somewhat realistic and the animals won't have facial expressions, meaning overall, just less emotion will be on the screen. Lady and the Tramp will be released on Disney Plus November 12th. Now let's take it to Cody, and oh thank goodness Abby is back with him so we have something to look at other than his face. Take it away, girl.
Hi, I'm Abby Martz, and welcome to Roundtable Review, the show that...
Wait, what? What's going on here?
I'm recording my show.
My show.
Well, according to this chart, viewers prefer when I'm on screen much more than when it's you.
Well, but whatever, let's just talk about a movie.
Fine, I guess you can be a guest star.
Now, you were a lot more excited for this movie than I was, so why don't you start us off with your thoughts?
Well, I was really excited because I'm a big Woody Harrelson fan. I'm excited for any movie he's in. I cannot wait. I like zombie movies. I'm a zombie girl. I was really excited for this movie, and I didn't really know what to expect more than that they were looking for Little Rock because she ran off with the boy from Berkeley, and, you know, they kept it interesting, you know?
I don't know. I was pretty in between on this one. I have a scale for comedy movies on whether they're effective or not, and yeah, I consider it a good comedy movie if it gets 6 audible laughs out of me. This one got about around 8, I'd say. So yeah, it's definitely good, but it's good because the first one was good, as they repeat a lot of jokes in this. So let's talk about the new characters in our family of deranged zombie killers. We have Zoe Deutsch's character, Madison, the stereotypical dumb blonde that you see in the trailer. That she was actually kind of the reason I wasn't excited for this. Just looking at the trailer, like I thought she was going to get annoying and overdone, but after the movie, she kind of grew on me. There were a few times there that she was starting to get annoying, but the point was that she was annoying, and I understand that.
I don't know, I feel like a bubbly character was needed.
You don't think Jesse Eisenberg's bubbly enough?
Where is the bubble? He is flat soda.
Flat soda for Jesse Eisenberg. Ugh. Overall, I like this movie. I had a good time watching it, but it stays too close to the first movie and doesn't really do anything new, I think. So I think I'm gonna go with a 6 on this one, slightly above average.
I'm gonna go with an 8 just because as far as sequels go, and it's like a sequel 10 years after the first one, I'd say it did a pretty good job. Normally I see a sequel to a movie and it makes me feel bad for the first movie.
All right, that's going to do it for us. We got a 6 and an 8. We're going to take it over to Emma with Nerd Games. See ZombieLand 2 this weekend.
Hello,
all of you nerds out there. My name is Emma Bjork, and welcome back to Nerd Games. This week, my guest and I are going to be playing a game of charades, but with Vine references. To play this game with me, I had to invite my favorite person in the whole entire world. Hold on to your hats, folks. It's my sister. It's Lindsay.
Oh, this is a good one. No, it's not. Okay. Emma, this is such an easy one.
What? I wanna be a
cowboy, baby. Yeah. Can I sing?
Wouldn't that not be charades?
You should know this one.
Give me more. Like, how am I supposed to get 5 words?
No.
5 field?
No. You're so close.
What? 5. I don't know what that is.
Okay, how about this?
2. 25.
No!
I have no idea.
2 bros. Chilling in a hot tub. 5 feet apart because we're not gay.
I'm so ashamed.
Disgrace on you. Disgrace on your family.
You're my
family. On your cow. Unwrap. It's an avocado.
Okay.
You're unwrapping something for Christmas? Christmas. Okay, help me out more. Christmas. Merry Christmas. Happy Christmas.
Yes.
Merry Christmas. Okay.
If you don't know it, you can toss it.
I know it, but it's very hard.
Are you skiing?
Yes.
Say Colorado. I'm a giraffe.
2 people talking on the phone. And they were roommates.
Yes. Driving. Broom, broom. I'm in my mom's car.
Yeah.
Get out of the car. Aw.
Oh, you should know this just based on this.
Hi, welcome to
Yes!
All right, Lindsay, thank you so much. You're the best. Join me next week for a new Nerd Game. This show is very fond of Emma's family, if you can't tell. That's gonna do it for me, but the show isn't over until we cure our sequelitis on Showdown, right after this commercial break. Stay tuned.
Hello and welcome to Nerd Showdown, the part of Nerd Central where we battle it out on a particular subject we have no business debating. With the recent release of ZombieLand 2, we have a bit of sequelitis here, and we will be debating the best sequel of all time. With me today, I have a couple of Gin Tours. The first is the creator of the Cooper Challenge, Keegan Cooper.
Woo!
Keegan, what's your sequel?
Shrek 2.
All right. And the other is creator of Game Breakers, Wesley Ellington. Wesley, what do you got?
My sequel is Dark Knight.
Oh, a classic. All right, let's show down. Keegan, why is Shrek 2 the best sequel of all time?
Shrek 2 is the best sequel of all time for a couple reasons. First, after the first movie, you get to see how Shrek and Fiona have first come together, and the second movie kind of lets you continue the adventure. So now they're going to meet the parents, and we all have that relationship in our life where you you come together with someone that you like and you get in a relationship, and now it's time to meet the parents. And so it gives everybody that kind of home feel. Everyone has that experience. So through this movie, you kind of get to see that, and it adds to why it makes it the best sequel, because it relates to something that everyone is going to experience sometime.
A very strong opening from Keegan. Wesley, why is The Dark Knight worthy of its praise?
The Dark Knight is the greatest sequel of all time because of the overall tone of the film. This is completely flipped from all the superhero movies that we had growing up. When it comes to Kazam or, just the Superman Returns movie with Brandon Routh. Those are terrible, lighthearted, colorful movies. This is what it's about. It's about a real story in a fake world. It sounds weird, but it uses characters that feel so real and have such real emotions that it feels like it's just that you're part of the story. And as you look at it just on a blank slate, it's weird that a rich guy is dressing up as a bat, and then there's a dude who puts on makeup and wants to kill people, right? But it felt real.
The Dark Knight is a successful movie, but I don't think that it is the best sequel out there. When you look for a sequel in any movie, you want it to kind of continue and build on the story that you can. When people think of Batman movie, they think of Batman and Joker, and that's what you get in The Dark Knight. You don't really get anything too special, and especially in The Dark Knight, you get this question of, do you even really need Batman? And that's something that he's kind of trying to always figure out throughout the movie. Of course you need Batman. People want Batman. You want that superhero versus the villain. And I don't think that when you look for a sequel, you don't want to be confused on whether you should even have Batman should exist or not. And I feel like that's what the struggle with Dark Knight is why that's what makes it overrated, is because it's not just this superhero versus this villain that we want to see them clashing and see their different ideals going with it. It's, does Batman even really need to exist? And you see that, Batman throughout the story, he's kind of confused on what he should do. Should he let the Joker just run rant and move on and live his life, or should he, be there? And it lends you to the question, Batman can always stop Joker, but he never does. He stops him and then he lets him go, so he always has something to do. Where if he just stopped him, then that would be it.
My disdain for Shrek 2 can begin by one. I'm a wrestling fan, and there had no wrestling in it. So that's the first notch on it that just makes me feel like it's not as good as the first one. Also, Eddie Murphy is one of the greatest comedians of all time, and he is a donkey in this. He's one of the most successful comedians to ever grace the planet, and he's a donkey. They completely limited that character. And I'm not sure if this is the one where he procreates with a dragon or not.
This is the first one.
That's the first one. Eddie Murphy's having baby. Okay, Mike Myers had great years on SNL and was phenomenal in Wayne's World and Austin and Goldmember, honestly. But this is just, it's a bad accent. It's not fun. It's not as good as it could have been. It has some of the most talented. Cameron Diaz is in this movie. It has some of the most talented people on the planet, and they're regulated to just procreating with dragons. And it's an ogre as the main character. I don't see the appeal.
Why is Shrek 2 a phenomenal sequel?
Shrek 2 is a phenomenal sequel because it is a family-friendly film. You can watch it with your family, and you're going to have those experiences and those instances in life where, oh my gosh, I can relate to this. And it's not the realism that you get, but it's supposed to be that cartoon, that fantasy. I mean, you're in a fairy tale land called Far, Far Away. It's a play on that Hollywood feel of living big, having that big life, and living in that mansion. And you get to see the relationships between all the different characters. And even though they may, have really successful careers, it's their ability to come together and play maybe a small role, even a donkey, and really make it successful. Or maybe it is an ogre, but it's a play on, maybe the ogre isn't that appealing, but it's let the ogre tell his story. And this is what happens in Shrek 2, and you see happen throughout all the Shrek movies. And that's why Shrek 2 is the best sequel out there.
Okay. Wesley, The Dark Knight, what's left to be said?
Let's be real, guys.
Okay.
The Dark Knight Rises was great. Dark Knight was amazing because it had such a ridiculous concept to it. This is a guy in a batsuit, a rich man in a batsuit choking a clown. That doesn't make any sense, but it felt so real. It felt so real because of the amazing performances, the amazing ability to build off what happened in the first one. The reason why the first one was decent compared to the second one was because we're so used to, like you said, Batman and Joker all the time. We didn't get that in the first one. We got Joker. We got the most real portrayal of Joker and that dichotomy between him and Batman. They're the duality of man in its prototypical sense. And this movie painted that in the most perfect picture. Christopher Nolan absolutely is an artist, and this is his motif. This is his best work. And honestly, when it comes to sequels, Christopher Nolan's masterpiece is much better than Eddie Murphy playing the donkey. So.
Dark Knight. Wesley, you got it. You can watch all of our previous episodes on the KNWT YouTube page. You can also follow KNWT on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And follow Nerd Central on Twitter at nerd_central_TV. Nerdmageddon is up next. We'll see you next week on an all-new Nerd Central.
I'm making waffles.